Much on his mind, Michael Voss dealing with death threats ahead of tomorrow night's round 18 opening game against the reigning Premier.
Collingwood's big guns return to the training track after illness sweeps through the club for Friday night footy.
And access all areas. Simo and Horse take us in the four walls of how the umpires go about adjudicating our game.
We've talked about is to step into it, embrace all of it.
Get in the room and fix it.
It's unedifying for a senior coach to do that.
They're on the side of caution with the brain. Take the man off.
They played the best footy I've ever seen at the start of the season. And if you'd said Brisbane lift the cup, I would have said, of course they do.
It's the stuff that legends are made of.
What is holding the ball? I don't think I could answer it clearly right now.
I could do something wrong, and I need to go, and the board sacks me.
The fans love it, and with no fans, no 360, right?
Round 18 is upon us. Welcome, everyone. They're dropping like flies here at Fox Footy. I had Jordan Lewis all set to go, and then down he went, and our
Late
man
call-up.
Simpson.
Yeah, wrong place at the wrong time.
Good. No,
I've even got his suit on, which is a bit baggy.
Are you
but
filling it out?
No, not in some spots.
30 years it took.
Sorry, Geordie.
Leave that. 30 years it took me to get here, and you're here.
Wow.
Just before we get in there, we've got lots to get through.
Yes.
And how have you enjoyed it, the transition?
It's been different. Yeah, it's less heavy, the media stuff.
Of course, from a coaching point of view.
Yeah, the review process and the preview process as well, it's a lot shortened.
Has anything has surprised you about it?
No. If you do the work, I feel like you can stay connected, and just no feedback. That's what happens, other than
in the media.
It's coming, I'm assuming. But actually, it was my anniversary today, which I didn't realise. My son rang me and said happy anniversary, and I thought, what's happened? But I got the arse on this day last year. So
what, to the day?
To the day, yeah. I think this was a press conference day when.
This has fallen beautifully for you then.
Yeah. Well, 12 months. It's gone quick.
12 months down the track, it's all worked out okay. Here you are hosting a national television show.
We'll see how we go in the next hour.
Well, we've got lots to get through tonight. We're going old school. The Demons are training Casey Field tonight, so we're going to cross out there and have a chat with Simon Goodwin. They're training under lights, or they're supposed to be training under lights. So I'm not sure what exactly went on. I hope this is not a sign of things to come for the Demons, Simo. The lights went out early in the piece here. So
what do you reckon they're doing it for? I mean, they've got a game at 1:10. What would the reason for a night session? We used to do this a little bit, but normally when we play at night.
I don't know. I assume they're just changing it up a little bit, trying to do something a little bit different. Horse is going to join us now. He's filthy. He hasn't got the opportunity. But you and he both have spent time in the inner sanctum of the umpires, which I'm looking forward to you talking about. How'd you find it, first of all?
Different, yeah. It was. I'm not saying I'm going to be drinking the umpire Kool-Aid on all the things they spoke about, but I'm not sure wearing suits was necessary either. But it was an interesting experience to see how much work they actually do behind the scenes. That's the arc there, which is magnificent. It's at the back of Marvel.
Yep.
And I think it was 2 games going on at once there, so a lot of support staff for each game. Yeah, it was interesting.
Jay-Z Clark, David King, Lee Montagna coming up after this, of course, with first crack. I spoke about Lauren Wood and the hamburgers. King is knocking down a few, and Joey, they
saw that.
So plenty to come tonight. Let's get into the serious issue, and it is a serious issue indeed. Michael Voss under pressure, there's no question about that. Coach of the Carlton Footy Club, they've been a talking point, front, back page of the paper for a long time, but news today that there's been, yesterday rather, a death threat broken by our man Jay-Z. I can't wait to get your thoughts on this. There's no one better place to talk about it. I know you understand the pressures that come with the job, but this is beyond the pale. There's no question about that. And Michael Voss spoke today.
So when you turn up on the weekend and I do what I do that for Carlton. I do that for the next kid that's going to be playing in the Carlton Football Club jumper. I do it so our football club can be, have this sustained success that we're all craving for. But there's a way we need to behave, and there's a way that we need to go about it. And when things are tough, you've got to show that support the right way, not the wrong way. Now, if that's a measure for some people on what it should look like, then I'm sorry, you don't belong here. And we'll move on, and we'll make sure that we continue to bring a supporter base that will support in the good times, and it will support in the bad. And we'll continue to support our people to be able to do that. So for me, the conversation doesn't need to be anything other than that. And it won't be for the next 6-7 weeks as well. So I get asked about different things, about pressure of the game and my job and, what the future looks like. Well, ultimately, I only need to look across the fence to find out what inspires me every single day, and we want to be the best version of ourselves, and that's how we're going to do it. So that's what we're going to focus on.
No, we've all been through that. It's tough. I see there was some death threat or something. Is that right? Yeah, that's pretty average. I've got no doubt he'll be doing the best job that he can. So, but that's just the world AFL coaches live in. It's tough.
Yeah, it's quite sad, isn't it? Like there's a boundary line, and then you step over that, and you've got your home life, and then there's reality of like, come on, let's be better than that as a society. There's a job. He's doing a job, and he's a great person, Michael, and I don't know. I hope he's going okay.
I've met some pretty strong, resilient characters in my time in footy, none more so than Vossy. It's sort of, I'd expect that, that there'd be, that's a criminal offence, and there'd be criminal consequences.
But, there's a flow-on effect. The first thing you always think about is the person beside you or the family member or the team. Because as a result of what I do, you appreciate there's an element of scrutiny that comes with that. But then there's a part that's completely unacceptable. And I think we can all sort of agree that that part is unacceptable. And we don't tolerate that as an industry. And so we leave that with the AFL integrity at the moment, and I expect a pretty forthright response.
Great solidarity and support for Michael Voss from the coaching brethren, no question about that, of which you're part of. How brutal is this, and does this surprise you or not?
A little bit. The one thing Vossy doesn't want is pity. You don't want. That's the worst feeling to have, that people pity and feel sorry for you, because you don't get forced to do the job. But this has gone over a certain line that it really shouldn't be crossed. But the actual pressures of a coach who's haven't met expectation, that's real. Everyone goes through that if you're around the game long enough. So,
but you understand that going on.
Yeah. And we probably started checking my mail about 4 years ago, the old anthrax check, just in case. It wasn't. It was pre-read. So the mail I got from the supporters or whatever, it was pre-opened.
All right. So logistically, there's
just to make sure
feedback that comes through someone else's.
Yeah. Some passionate supporters, and then there's some ridiculous, letters that get written in, but I never got to see them. But there was a few around. And then Vossy's got to deal with a few things. One is obviously the team and the club and doing his job. But there'd be someone in his family saying, listen, you got to pull up. Let's just get out of this. Let's just step aside, and it's not worth it. And then there's another member of your family who's saying, you're not quitting. Don't you dare. And I had that.
Did you?
My dad remember saying it to me, you're not going anywhere.
So,
okay.
So hang on. So when you were struggling and when the pressure was there and it was real, you had members of your family suggesting, right, enough's enough?
Yeah, absolutely. And, mine went for 3 or 4 years, to be honest. But I didn't get to the levels of the supporter base at West Coast different than Carlton. I must admit, having some success, there's a bit of leeway as well. But dealing with the pressure was probably more when it got personal in the media, in particular the West. But what Vossy's going through with that piece around the crossing the line piece, that's another level which I never got to really experience. But what he's going through from a day-to-day operations, trying to lead and be stoic, try and say the right things and back the staff and players in, he's got their backs, all those things, he's doing really well. But there'll be thoughts within his mind going, is this worth it? Yeah. And if he gets through this, which I think he might, then it'll be a story to tell down the track. And we've seen that with some other coaches over the journey, with Bomber Thompson and Dimmer and these types who've gone through a dip in their careers and then they come through the other side. But you also see people that don't get through it and then life goes on, like I've just gone through the last 12 months.
I just want to back over. Tell me about your old man. How did that go? If you're open to talking about it. Your father's a huge, strong figure in your life. So what was his message when it was all...
Well, I just said, you're not quitting. And
he rang you to say you're not...
Well, I spoke about it because I think it's time.
Right.
And he said, well, you shouldn't. And then those influences in your life are important, aren't they?
Yeah.
I was trying to tell Dad I was on the back page every day because he doesn't read the West Australian. But working through that, and in the end, it's just footy. It's there's more to life, and your family's really important, how they handle things. Because if there's a family member that's really struggling, then that does creep into your mind as well. So a lot going on with Vossy at the moment, personally, I'm sure, but he's putting on a brave face. He doesn't want pity.
No.
All he wants his boys to do is play well this week and be competitive, I would have thought.
And then when you get to game day, by the time you get to game day, you focus solely on what's going to take place, and they've got a big one. And it's against the Brisbane Lions, the reigning premier, tomorrow night at Marvel Stadium. Teams are in, no wholesale changes, no panic. Chincotta and Durden come in. Akers gets dropped, so that's a big one.
Yeah.
Evans is omitted as well. From a Brisbane Lions point of view, they get stronger.
Yeah.
Big Oscar McInerney comes in first game since.
It's going to be a challenge, isn't it? You know, so you think any player that saw Vossy speak today, if they don't bring maximum effort, there's something wrong. So, and there's a fair argument.
We said that for a while, though.
Well, the last 2 weeks, that's what we haven't seen.
Yeah.
Their DNA, at least they've been saying they've been competitive around the contests, the clearances, even inside 50 differential. It's their ball movement, their connection inside 50 that they've struggled at, but their effort hasn't been questioned. And since probably Port Adelaide, the numbers don't look great with the metrics that you live off in terms of pressure, contested ball, clearances. So I suspect he'll go back to that.
But how many times can you go back to it? I mean, for 3 weeks in a row, I reckon we've all sat there and said, what do you want to see? You want to see effort. At least you see effort. And it was there against Collingwood. I think the effort was there for the first quarter and a bit, but it wasn't sustained.
No. Well, there's effort, then there's talent. And, you know, they're playing a side that's a premiership team. So let's keep a bit of reality in what's in front of them. The inclusions the last 2 or 3 weeks haven't blown me away. So it's not like they're full strength, ready to go.
No.
But they've got to get back to the minimum requirements, which Vossy stated about a month ago, that there's some parts of the game that are working really well. Now there's no parts. So they've got to get back to the main strengths, which they hung the hat on 3 weeks ago.
Just a quick word on Brisbane. How are you seeing that?
They're just doing what they need to do, and you know, being fortunate enough to be in some successful areas as a player and as a coach, you just do what you got to do to win. And if it's a 20-point win, 30-point win, 10-point win, but eventually they've got to pull out that fifth gear and really put a team away and leave a scar is probably what we used to call it. You know, can you actually put a team, you know, to the sword and leave a scar?
You got no concerns with them, though?
No.
Well, that's Thursday night.
You? Do you have concerns?
No, I don't. But I always think it's the biggest challenge in footy to be able to come up and win again after you've done it.
I reckon they might have gone through that already.
Yeah.
At what point is it?
Their response to Port Adelaide last week gives you great heart. It looked like, you know, for the first 10 or 15 minutes you thought, this is real, you know, this fact that they're equivocating. And then they just went bang. It reminded everyone.
Yeah. The first half of the year is probably the bigger worry, I think, in the premiership.
Yeah, they'd be sharpening up now, 7 weeks ago.
And their health is the biggest factor as well.
Speaking of health, bit of a health drama with the Magpies. As we said, Joshy Dacos to join us last night, couldn't get there. Darcy Moore was coming, he couldn't get there.
Was he really crook or just didn't want to come on?
Well, let's have a listen to Craig McRae, the coach. Did he not want to come on? Of course he wanted to come on.
You heard Jared wasn't here.
Here's the coach, Craig McRae, today.
It's probably been 2 weeks now, and we were probably worse last week, to be honest. And we just used a bit of what we learned in the old times of, like, don't come in if you're sick, and it's not a bad policy.
Bobby Hill, will we see him make the trip?
Bobby's sick.
Bobby Schultz, is he going to make the trip?
Yeah, he trained really, really well today. We're wrapped for the way he's prepared. He was ill last week, which really was the only reason he did play. He was ready to really push the boundaries of that, but he'll play this week, yeah.
So last week the issue, Dacos boys, Darcy Moore all trained today. Lockie Schultz still side bottom are going to return. Still no Bobby Hill. Going for 9 straight.
Yeah.
Don't win 9 straight too often.
No, and it's been pretty impressive. Like, it's not based on talent, but they've got talent. So it's a system-based process they live by. On Mondays, they're not showing the flashy things. They're showing the knock-ons, the team ethos around the predictability, the down-the-line plays they do well, the help-side support from a backline point of view. It's not built off talent, but to have talent to complement your system it's great to have. And can you go through a full season? When was the last team that went through the whole season without a dip is probably a good question to ask.
Spoke to Joey yesterday. I mean, one of the great things that Craig McRae's got in his back pocket is who's not playing and who has to come back between now and the end of the year.
It's going to be a really good conversation for them to have, if they have that health, because that's what they haven't had in the last 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden they come back, or the last year anyway, and they've got some good decisions to make. All
right, thanks to Aussie Broadband. Let's get to our D-Day scenario. Who have you got?
My D-Day? I've got Gold Coast. Yeah. That's just a big game for them. Like this time every year, they've been around the mark. And way back to when Garry Ablett was playing, when they were 9-4 or something like that. Yeah, 9-6. And I think this game now is... Talk about the big boy month, and I know Dimmer will decide when that is. I got the feeling this is the first game of a very difficult block that will define their season. So this will be huge for them. It's a home game. They've got everything happening up there on top of Collingwood playing there. So it looks wet, wet and sticky and humid. So that might suit them. We looked at some vision about them compared to Richmond a few weeks ago. They're very similar style with the forward handball and the aggressive way they bounce off half-back. So looking forward to see what they do. What about you?
I love it. I think it's perfect timing for the Gold Coast Suns, and Damien Hardwick spoke on this today.
Is this the biggest game in Suns history?
Well, I've only been here 18 months, so you ask a coach, every game's a big game, to be perfectly honest. I know that, you know, there'll be a lot of talk around, a lot of chatter around it sort of thing. Hopefully it's the beginning of a lot of big games for people of the Suns. So, you know, we think we've got a pretty special group that's capable of some really good things. So, you know, hopefully a lot of Suns fans get out there and show some support, but more importantly, jump on board. I think this side's really, really capable of doing some pretty impressive things in the not-too-distant future.
Can't wait. Record crowd expected at Carrara, 25,000. If you're there, Nitro Circus is going to be involved.
It's Nitro Circus, not an elephant, is it?
I know they're your favourites. They're the motorbikes. You do the flips and all that stuff.
Why?
Why? Because it's an experience, Adam. This is the whole experience. Not everyone's going to be as enamoured with it.
Is that on the ground?
I'm not sure if this is going to be at
in the centre circle.
But look at that. Tell me you're not impressed by that.
No, I'm not.
Well, someone will be. Yeah. And I'll add to the occasion.
What's your D-Day?
My D-Day is Freo. I'm going for the Dockers. I'm not going for them. I think the Dockers have got... I think it's great that they're playing Hawthorn at home. Under some pressure. SCG loss against Sydney. The expectations are there and it's real, and they, you know, you've been as close to these teams as anyone. And Justin Longmire would be expected to play finals this year.
Yeah, it's funny. They lose to Collingwood by 13 points. They win 6 in a row, and they have a good showing against Sydney. And I know we all know where they're coming from, and now it's like the pressure's back on. And I know they're ninth, and that's the problem. But the form line's been pretty good.
Yeah, no, it has. They've got Hawthorn and Collingwood in the next 2 weeks.
That's big.
So that's why it's real
for them too.
So the Hawthorn game at home, the Collingwood game away. So they need to sort of park this one and get a win, I would think, and then worry about what's coming for the rest of the way.
Great games coming up.
What's that?
Some great games coming up this weekend. Yeah, really looking forward to it.
All right, we're going to take a break. Simon Goodwin is going to join us next from Casey Fields. He's been a regular part of our AFL 360 journey this year, the highs and the lows. They won 5 on the bounce there. They've lost 5 on the bounce. They've got a month of footy ahead that just might determine exactly where they're going. And then John Longmire, the horse, to join us. Fascinating insight into the world of AFL umpiring.
Bryant. Oh, Rankin taunting. What a player. Yes, we salute you, Isaac. He's kicked 4. Rankin sold some candy with class. He's got 4. He's their fearless leader today. A little celebration. Adelaide take a 7-point lead.
Here they go again. Tapped out of Rankin in the forward pocket. Runs away from the pack and slots it home for his 4th. Jeez, he's a classy player. Gets a bit of space. He's hard to stop.
Rankin sells some candy. Goes for number 4. Snaps it through. He's having a day out. Is Isaac Rankin. The class is rising to the top. And Adelaide have their second of the third quarter.
Probably a good thing our regular contributor Simon Goodwin's not in the studio. I don't think he wanted to live through that Isaac Rankin goal 4 times. He's out on location at Casey Fields. Goody, welcome.
Evening, Gaz. Evening, Simo. Good to be on.
Adam Simpson co-hosting tonight, just slowly taking over Fox Footy. He's just dominating the airwaves at the moment. Of which Goody's very impressed.
Yeah, the silence is deafening.
He's excited about having you in the chair. Before we get into it, earliest shots out of Casey. Had the lights out, mate. What's going on there?
Yeah, look, just to try and create a different stimulus for the training. Obviously, as AFL players, you get into the routine and winter's around and everyone's sort of getting the grind of the season. It's just a chance to really freshen things up, have a night session, which the guys don't do a lot of, and then come inside, have some dinner, have some hot soup like it was back in the old days, Gaz.
You've got the lights on there, that it's got the full ground coverage. Sometimes it doesn't cover the forward pockets. And a day game this week, I know it doesn't really matter, but it doesn't worry you that the fact you're playing during the day, during the week?
Nah, look, we've got another session this week, our T2 session. You know, we'll be a morning session, and obviously we spent a lot of time training during the day, so it didn't really matter. It was just really about changing the stimulus of our training, and the amount of energy that was here tonight was really prevalent. So it was great to have a night training session. I personally haven't done it for a long time.
Good to change things up, but you've had a period where you won 5 in a row and got things on track. You've now dropped the last 5. How's it all holding together?
Yeah, look, obviously really disappointing to lose 5 games in a row, you know, in a patch of the season when, you know, we'd come off a pretty strong bunch of form. But, you know, obviously when you go through the results in an individual sense, there's been some really strong performances, and we're certainly really clear as a footy club about where we're at and what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to build towards our next premiership team. And we know we're in that little bit of transition, and we've got to sometimes remove the outcome and really focus on what we can control and really get after some of the things that we want to get after. And that's sort of how we play, how we start to build our team. And, you know, we're playing a lot of kids at the moment, and we're trying to mend the old, trying to get the old and the new together to form a new frontier for the Melbourne Footy Club, and that's certainly what the next 7 weeks is all about.
How is that balance going, Goody, with you know, you've still got 14 or 15 premiership players in the side, and you want to blood some young players in, and dealing with dropping senior players for form or opportunity for others? Is that a challenge for you?
Yeah, look, you would know, Simo, it's a challenge for any time. Anytime you're trying to create change, it can be challenging, and, you know, you need to make some really tough decisions in that space, and we've seen it through this year with Bailey Fritsch. And I don't like the word omitted. For a lot of these guys, it's about getting their game back on track, or, you know, get them back into some really good form. And it was like that with Jake Lever just recently, and you don't take these decisions lightly. You know, we were able to send Jake back to the VFL, get him into some really good form where he's feeling confident about his footy, marking the ball again. And then he comes back in last week and he looks like he's right back to his very best. So for some guys, it's different in different cases, but sometimes change in the way you play, change in the team dynamics is tough, and you've got to start to really mould and shape that again. And that's the part of what this process we're going through now. And, you know, we're in a real hurry to get results, and I'm sure our supporters are frustrated, as am I, but the results are coming.
How did he take it, Jake? Reports, and I'd expect him to be filthy about going back, but how did he take it?
I've never seen a player not disappointed with being, you know, omitted from the team. And actually, I don't actually, as I said, I don't like that word, but, you know, Jake was really clear after, you know, 24 hours when we settled down and we spoke about the reasons why and what the process was to get him back into some really good form. He's been brilliant. You know, he's a leader of our footy club, and it was about getting him back into form. You know, he did a bit of a laugh today about some of the reports that are out there. You know, he's a passionate Melbourne man. He's going to be here for a long time.
Well, let's talk about your midfield a little bit. It's always been one of your greatest strengths, that the quad call those type of players that you've got going through the middle. Have you got any opportunity to play younger players through there, or is it more of a challenge to get people through that midfield?
Yeah, look, you know, we've got some first-year players that are high draft picks that, you know, obviously come in as midfielders, and they will in time. And Xavier Lindsay spent a big part of the game through the middle of the ground at the weekend. He didn't attend a lot of centre bounces, but he was certainly a midfielder, you know, in our mix throughout the day. So we'll keep exposing these guys. Harvey Langford's done it for periods. You know, Xavier Lindsay did it on the weekend, and Carla Windsor's someone that we're doing that at VFL level, developing his game on the inside so we can continue to transition the middle of the ground and find a different way forward for Melbourne, and that's what we're about. But you've got to develop them the right way, and there's different ways to develop players, and sometimes they've got to be around some senior bodies to really maximise where they're going.
You've got to be cognisant of the load. We talked about this through the week about these first-year players. So Lindsay and Langford have, I would imagine, surpassed all your expectations. They've been terrific. But do you have to manage how many games they play between now and the end of the year?
Yeah, we've certainly managed them all year. You know, it's a big part of our high performance program is to make sure we look after our younger players and make sure they train accordingly. And you know, tonight was a good example. You know, Harvey and Xavier didn't do a lot of training at all. You know, did a little bit of stride work, a little bit of touch, and you know, that's really about managing them to make sure they get through. Game exposure is really important for them in their development, and we'll certainly prioritise games over some of the training. So they've been outstanding in terms of their ability to recover, but it's certainly something that we're really conscious of because I think the data speaks for itself that young players miss a lot of games and we're not in a position where we want that to happen.
Good, it's your 200th game this week, from what I've heard. So you've seen the highs and the lows. What's outside the premiership, obviously? What's been one of the more satisfying pieces of your career?
Yeah, obviously, you sort of. This week gives you a chance to just reflect a little bit on where it all started. And back when I first started at Melbourne, was we're at a pretty low point as a footy club, and I've been really fortunate and humbled to work with so many great people to help build the Melbourne Footy Club to success. And that was ultimately just the great reward was the journey of that. That wasn't linear either. It was ups and downs. There was a lot of trials and tribulations, but there were so many great people that I was fortunate to work with, and they're the memories that you certainly remember. And right now we're going through that little transition again, and that's what actually excites me as a coach, and it excites the people that you got a lot of work to do it. But that's what excites me about that process, to build it back to where you want to be and to have that success. And where we sit right now is the bit that I enjoy the most.
One of only 4 premiership coaches, that's pretty rare air. Is it a good thing when you pick the paper up yesterday and you see the CEO unequivocally backing you for next year?
Yeah, look, I think it's obviously reassuring, and it gives you a great feeling of alignment throughout the footy club. And we've had some wonderful conversations, Paul, myself, Alan Richardson, and even Brad Green, throughout the year about where we sit as a footy club, what we're trying to achieve, and we're trying to move forward as fast as we can to be the most successful club we can possibly be as quick as we can. And we're hungry to get there quick, and we're all aligned on that. And it is reassuring to get the support and the stability, of Paul, the incoming CEO, and obviously Greenie as well.
Sunday, North Melbourne, 1 o'clock. It's a big game for both clubs. It's family day though. Under 14 go free. You want to get as many there as you possibly can, obviously.
Yeah, we do. It's Kids Day. All the kids under 14 get in for free. There's lots of activities, lots of things. I know the players look forward to it. There'll be 23 really special kids that will be able to walk out with their favourite players, and it's a special day for the kids. We want everyone to come along. Great chance for us as a footy club to grow and get better again.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Have you back in the studio in a couple of weeks' time. What's soup? What sort of soup we got on the go tonight?
I think we've got vegetable minestrone soup tonight, and finished off with a bit of lasagna. So looking forward to tucking into that, the old-fashioned soup. I think they're into it now, the lads.
You can do with the feed. Off you go. Very nice to see you tonight, and good luck on the weekend.
See you guys.
Simon Goodwin there,
Bye.
who's been a regular contributor. We're going to leave
Veggie soup
and have lived the highs and lows.
Veggie soup? That's the low one.
What's that?
My rankings.
Low?
It's low.
Turn it up.
There's tomato, pumpkin, pea and ham.
This man here, John Longmire, is filthy. He didn't get the chance to co-host, but he's up next. You've been inside the 4 walls of the umpires. Fascinating. Don't miss this.
Then the 90s came along, and we had a great team then, very similar to the 70s. No one intimidated us. We had a mantra: war without weapons. Everyone who ran out put his body on the line. I want to see you blokes do that tonight. You look at it. I had a look at Hawthorn last week, and I can tell you what, a lot of you blokes have got a bit to answer for. Tonight, you make sure that you're hard at the ball, you're hard at the man with the ball. You tackle and chase. You put pressure on your opponent. No daydreaming. Just go for it. Give it your best shot.
Magnificent scenes last week, centenary celebrations for the North Melbourne Football Club, and Adam Simpson and John Longmire who join us. Ooh, that would have put the shivers up and down your spine. The Horse, how are you?
Yeah, good boys. Yeah, I'm not too sure what the old coach would think about you, Simo, on Media Street tonight. But what a fantastic! It was great. I mean, I was standing behind him. I couldn't really hear much of what he said. I know Cam Zerha was in the front. He got a spray literally, but it was great to hear the old coach going at it.
It was outstanding. It's one of the highlights of the year, I reckon. Now, let's get into what you two boys have been up to over the last week, and you've embedded yourself in the coaching of the umpires in the umpire fraternity, which I think is an outstanding thing. Give us a snapshot, first of all, you, Horse. What part of this whole umpiring job were you involved in?
Bits and pieces throughout the game. I was at the game. I was at the North Melbourne versus the Bulldogs game. So I was actually, for the preparation part, I was out on the ground. I missed the umpires in the prep sense, but I'm under the impression that they certainly do. They prepare like an AFL team. They have vision during the week of the opposition or the team that they're playing, that they're looking at, and they're umpiring. They have they talk about the matchups. They talk about ruck contests, which is a really big part of the game as well. And then they get together, the four of them, on the Friday beforehand in a preparation sense and talk about the game. So there's a lot more involved than what I thought. And when I actually walked into the box and I'm sitting up there, I was actually surprised. There's a boundary umpire coach, there's a goal umpire coach, and there's 2 field umpire coaches, plus 3 more in the arc. So there's an amazing amount of scrutiny that goes on.
There's not too many coaches, is it? That sounds like a hell of a lot of coaches.
Well, I guess, we want the game to be more professional. There's a lot of people and a lot of eyes looking at it. Certainly the review process that Simo was a part of was pretty stringent during the week. We'll talk a little bit more in a minute about some of the things that maybe they could look at going forward.
Simo, what about yourself?
Well, I got to witness a little bit of that, but I went to the Tuesday review, and it was as close to an AFL environment as you can imagine. So, except I don't know how you win. Yeah. I know how you lose if you're an umpire. Yeah. So they've got a trademark, they do a review, they get everyone in the country on teams to work through the issues of the week. They break into 3 rooms like we used to do, Horse, where you break down your learnings to smaller groups. And
so are they game specific, or is it for the whole coaching?
No, one of the rooms was what's your decision sort of thing, like the contentious, what do we think with this one? And then it might have been prior opportunity in a room and then pushing the back in another room, and each week you'd rotate some of the issues that they'd work through. So it was a very familiar environment, quite professional, and on top of that they do their training and their weights and that sort of stuff at Marvel. So they had the arc situation, and a really good look at that as well. It was...
Right, we're going to get to the arc in a minute. So what we're interested in, some of the issues that come out of it. First of all, from your point of view, Horse, having sat there and watched it all, what are some of the issues for you?
Well, if you go through a few of the things, the new rules are actually coming in all the time can make it pretty confusing for them. Certainly not making it easier. There's a lot going on. I think injuries and HIA issues are real issues that happen during the course of the game that they should be able to, the coaches should be able to talk to the umpires about, but I don't think they're allowed to. So, the off-the-ball issues that the coaches can see would be good for them to be able to contribute.
So just really on that, let me hold you up there. So if there's an injury on the ground, one of these coaches can't communicate to the umpire and say, hey, we've got a serious injury here, hold up, or look, that's not too bad, that one, just keep playing.
It's my understanding that they leave that to the doctors in the arc, and so the reliance upon the doctors in the arc. And as Simo saw in the arc, there's plenty of people there looking at it, but I think that would be beneficial if the coaches could actually communicate if they saw a player behind play to be able to intervene and help them out. The other part too, which is the third part there, is that the coaches really can't give any on-field feedback during the course of the quarter. There's some protocols, agreed protocols between the umpires and the AFL that are really strict about what they can and can't do. So I think it might be time to look at that again. Maybe that the feedback for the actual decision making and maybe the positioning during the quarter, rather than just waiting a quarter time and half time and 3/4 time, can be looked at.
And you talked about making, how hard it is and how complex it is trying to make one decision. You got a good example for us here?
Yeah, probably one of the ones that stood out to Simo and I was the stand rule, which has only been brought in a few years ago. And if you have a look at that, this is all the things that an umpire has to consider when making a decision or looking at a stand rule. So when a player is awarded a mark or free kick, the umpire needs to determine what amongst those 19 things in a split second he needs to consider. And as you can imagine, Gaz, there's a fair bit involved in that, and is there any wonder that they can be a bit confused at times?
That is unbelievable. 19 considerations, make a snap decision.
Well, I mean, it just keeps adding. So a bit like the senior coaches over the years, and this is not a complaint at all, but I think we've just added to the umpires' issues in terms of trying to get a clean game that we all agree has been umpired well. So to debunk a few issues, there's no half-time, listen, we're 10 to 20, we better even it up in the second half.
Right.
There's no one in their ear saying, hey, that's a free kick by the whistle.
So that doesn't have... That's
the integrity piece on that is very, very, very strict. So we think that they could help each other a little bit more and just loosen a few things in terms of what we spoke about, HIA, for example. But they're pretty much a rebuild team. So I asked a few of them, what if you're an AFL team, who would you be? And they didn't specifically say anything other than rebuild. So since COVID, they've gone... and they suffered from COVID as well. They've gone from no feeder competitions with the VFL and Waffle. Then they went to 3 to 4 umpires about 2.5 years ago. So you've got 12 players with 300 games more experience. You've got 12 umpires with 50 games or less experience. So it can't go back to 3, Gaz, because the veterans, eventually they'll fall off the perch a bit earlier.
Because of the physical demands?
The physical demands.
Yeah.
And they've just got to get games into these young... They're not young, they're in their 30s, by the way.
Yeah. So have you got some vision of where their positioning and how it looks, or how we should be looking at it?
Let's have a look at the vision, because there's some debate here, and some of the debate Horse and I have with these umpires is they're getting in the way, all right? So this is fine. This is all good. It's on the outside. There's pretty much a diamond. There's 4 umpires, 2 in the midfield, 1 at each end, and they work together with spatial awareness. But at times you get caught, like this play here, where you get caught in the corridor. And some of the arguments that we have with umpires is that's exactly where we want to kick it. And in fact, Horse and I stole it from Horse. There's an umpire kick that we'd call because they'd stand on the 45. So as you see this play around, it goes out of bounds and they go into their positions where there's 2 in the midfield, 1 D50, 1 forward 50. And this is the chance to get out the way or get them some space. So
where should they go?
I think they're in the right space now for this particular stoppage, but this is 2 years in. So they had 3 umpires for 30 years. So I just think that it's going to take time to evolve with their positioning. So if you look at the umpire in the bottom right, he just gets caught in the traffic a little bit, just probably 5 metres, and this comes back in on him, and unfortunately gets caught in. Nothing happens, but that's not where you'd want to be, as the feedback I got from the umpires. Can you be a bit skinnier? But that corridor kick there, where as coaches were saying, can you pull back a little bit? But they're saying we need to be in line with down-the-line play. We can't be too far away from making decisions. So their challenge is to get as close as they can without getting in the way. And the coach's challenge is to probably understand they'll get better with positioning because they're 2 years in to a new system.
Yeah, we should remember that.
I just think...
But they're not going back to 3, I
don't think they can, because then you've got to re-educate. And so there's the running patterns, which was big Horse, wasn't it? Probably we thought a little bit overs. And there's the decisions.
A lot of focus on the running pattern.
And then there's the decisions. So it was an interesting night. And very professional, though, very professional.
What about the fact that you can get caught up, Horse, if you are in the wrong spot?
Yeah, and that's something you've got to be mindful of. And if I'll just take we'll have a look at a bit of a clip from the Bulldogs North Melbourne game. And if you're sitting at home watching it, and I guess the first thing you see when this happens is how come the umpires didn't see this? A front-on contact, the clear free kick. Was actually paid to the Bulldogs player. So, the first thing is, how did that happen? Alice obviously not happy with it. But then you go, OK, this is how they reviewed it. And Simo was there as part of the review. And you can see just the umpires on the left of screen here in the red, they needed to be a bit deeper to be able to get a better vision of that actual collision. So this was deemed a mistake by the umpires, not only in the decision-making process, but importantly in the positioning process to allow them to get a better view. And Simo was part of that review process, which I believe was pretty rigorous.
Is that communicated? Would that be communicated in-game, that one, for instance?
I think it's the pattern versus event. I think at half-time you can give the feedback. They can use vision, they can do all the things, but if they see something that's worth saying, they can do that, but not hey, you just missed that, or hey, blow the whistle, that's a free kick, which... you can debate whether down the track they'll start doing that, but the integrity piece then comes into question. Can you imagine what people would say when you knew that there was someone calling the free kicks from up top?
Yep. So the interesting thing for me now is that you both spent considerable time there, more than most, I would suggest. What recommendations would you make coming out?
These aren't... I don't know why we did this, Horse, because it's just what our thoughts were from the end. So without any order, we sort of thought... the coaches in the box, they need to advise on the HIA and the injury. So, it's a cramp, let it play on. or he's down, stop the play. Just something simple. We don't have to wait for a doctor for that direction.
So they need to have their own ARC doctor come in to say...
I just think it's common sense. We see it.
Right.
We see Dacos cramping, and he just looks like a cramp, let the play go. Or that he's down, stop the play.
Right.
So take that decision.
So the Lockie Schultz, which was...
Yeah. They could have been fixed in 2 seconds. So that's pretty straightforward. We need to simplify the rules, Gaz. It looked really hard. The too high rule now is not just too high. Did he lift the shoulder? Did he drop the knees? Did he initiate contact? So that was interesting. The boundary umpires, they can't go in. So there's female boundary umpires that are elite, but they just need to come in, and male, come in a couple of metres to get the 18 metres right. But we can't do that because it has to be on the outside.
Right.
So if it's a windy day at Mars Stadium, you can't bring the boundary umpires in. So, you know, and what can they do to get outside the corridor? I think that's just evolution. That'll take a year or two just to work through how to use 4 umpires in the best possible way. And then the last one is they've got to throw the ball up in the middle. At 10% of their training, 15% is bouncing. They're getting in the way.
Yep.
So as much as you think get out the way of the umpires, if they throw it up, you're going to exit a lot quicker. And there's got to be something done in the centre bounce. It's too mechanical now. There's no flair anymore in the middle. So we think those things, just no particular order. And I don't know what you're going to do with it, but that's just what we saw.
Horse, you got more empathy, less empathy. What's your takeaway?
Really, there's a couple of things come out of it for me, Gaz. One is more empathy in regards to how tough it is to actually umpire the game, but also probably how professional they were. There's a lot involved in it. They had great support staff. There's a lot going on. I think they can certainly add the coaching during the quarters. That might be something that I think is a real benefit. But just as, you know, talking to Simo when he went to the review, they really run like an AFL team does. And so that's, I think, a great comfort to all of us, I think, that have coached and are coaching.
So you're saying in the lead-up, they're saying, OK, Collingwood are playing this weekend, let's anticipate who's going to Dacos. Let's anticipate, you know, how Moore's going to play on Sam Darcy, that sort of stuff, that level?
Yeah, and I think that's, from my angle, I was actually surprised with that, but in a good way. I think that's a good thing. I mean, they were preparing for what the game is likely to throw up. You know, they talk about ruck contests a lot, you know, the jumpers versus the wrestlers and things like that. They talk about the likely run-with roles, and they talk about it not only as individuals and watch vision, they actually talk about it as a group of 4 umpires going into the game. So they do prepare very well, like AFL teams prepare.
Probably didn't see the direct feedback, the Dennis Pagan type of feedback.
Right.
Both of us noticed on game day it was a system and running patterns, not, hey, listen, we've made a few blues here, we need to sharpen up. So it depends on the umpire and how they take the feedback, but that's the one thing we probably thought, OK, how does that sit on a contentious game, but maybe we just got pretty simple games and we went and saw them.
All right, last one. Both your premiership coaches, should this be compulsory for every AFL senior coach to do what you two have done?
I think it should be compulsory for the media.
Well, I was going to get to that.
I reckon...
Don't defer because you're now part of the media.
Well, I think the coaches get educated yearly, and so does the media, actually. They come out and speak to all the... You might have missed the one that Fox did, but they do.
I've never missed it, thank you.
So we get educated, but not like what we saw.
Right.
And we've got time on our hands at the moment. I'm not quite sure, you know, spending a day and a half with the umpires is the... But hopefully that just lifts the curtain a little bit about what's happening behind there and have a little bit of empathy for a bad day that someone has.
Yep.
It's not like they're not trying. They're rebuilding, and hopefully the question more is why are they in rebuild? That's a good question, but I can sort of see why they are.
And just as we let you go, Horse, just give us an assessment on your mate here. He jumped into this hot seat pretty quickly.
Yeah, he was very excited about it when it came out that he had the opportunity. He grabbed it, Gaz, and you're quite lucky he didn't tip you out of the chair as well. I think he wanted a big chair. So he's actually done pretty well to sit there.
No, we've got to wrap it up, mate.
Appreciate it, mate. Good to talk to you. We'll talk again next week.
Good on you, boys.
Good on you. Johnny Longmire joining us there. Very, very interesting insight into the world of AFL umpiring. Coaches next Monday, Adam Kingsley, the GWS Giants, big game against the Cats coming up, and Minnie McQualter. They're both good mates. They're always good viewing. They'll be back with us next Monday, and thankfully, Jared will be back. Let's go to Jules from PointsBet with the round 18 key odds.
Thanks, Gary. Friday night, People First Stadium, Gold Coast versus the Magpies. Now, Magpies marginal favourite. Don't be surprised as we get closer to the bounce of the ball here that the Suns just firm up a little bit and they become a little bit closer. Dry conditions. 3 times it's been dry at People First Stadium this year. The overs is hit. 171.5 is the total point line. I think we want to play in that space. Gold Coast averaged 96 this year. The Magpies averaged 94. And People First Stadium, it's a high-scoring ground. It averages around 190. So let's hit the overs there at that 171.5. Thrill seekers out there. Noah Anderson versus Nick Dacos. Who's going to get the most disposals? They both just about bring their own footy. I want to be with the tie. I reckon they'll both get 35. I reckon they'll both kick 3 goals each. I reckon the game will end up as a draw, and we'll take the tie, $23. Enjoy the footy.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Welcome to the Super Saturday September Shaper, right here on Fox Footy. First up, live at 12:30, it's the Bulldogs and the Crows under the roof at Marvel. What a matchup, what firepower. The biggest between these two since this.
Stringer on the right boot!
This absorbing elimination final shootout a decade ago.
That is 9 straight!
Yeah, a lot's changed, not least the emergence of these two colossal forwards.
Darcy, he's in guns.
Sam Darcy.
Backs his talent. Oh, it is prodigious.
And Riley Thilthorpe.
He's just too big and too good at the moment.
Then we're off to Sydney's West. The Giants have banked the last 3 against the Cats.
It's a leer. What a moment.
Remarkably, by 7 points or less.
Chris Scott can do nothing.
No wonder we're expecting another showstopper.
You talk about giant victories. Talk about this one.
Then a Super Saturday night doubleheader, exclusive to Fox Footy. The Tigers and the Bombers at the MCG.
This is a highlight reel for the Bombers.
Wrapping up in the West, the Dockers and the Hawks, both with top 4 hopes. But is there room for both?
Yeah, we lost the game. We're not out of it. Keep fighting. Try and beat Hawthorn next week.
Super Saturday. Every moment counts and every moment lives right here. Exclusively on Fox Footy.
Nearly done. First crack of Cares up next. Jay-Z's in the chair with Kingy and also Joey, who's been on deck every night this week. He's getting overs. Let's finish with the weekend picks, thanks to PointsBet. What's your round 18 headline?
I reckon there's going to be at least 6 games that are decided by under 10 points or less. Right. I reckon it's a fantastic round. How about you?
So you've gone the serious sort of take.
Well,
I just
it's my first day, mate.
No. I've gone with Kenny chokes on the strawberry and cream in the pre-game after woofing down the teeth. But I always go a bit different. What about the plot twist?
Well, this is serious. I think Brad Scott could actually play this week with the injuries, and Chris could be the coach, standing coach.
Well,
actually, who is the most AFL-ready coach?
To play? Goody.
Yeah. Goody? And who's the least ready?
I'm not answering that. You answer that. Umpire cleans up Matt Rowell. Hardwick calls for $50,000 fine. Okay. And if you got your last buck, which way are you going?
I'd put it on Sydney to win every game for the rest of the year and make finals.
You think that's going to happen?
No, but it's a long shot. It's my last dollar. Yes?
It is. That's worth having a go. I'm backing the Giants in to do it again. They've beaten Geelong 3 games in a row, so I think they can do it again.
Oh, that's serious.
You've been absolutely magnificent.
Thanks, mate.
You have. I wouldn't be surprised if you're in that chair when Jared gets back. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of it. He's back from Disney. He's in Disneyland, Jared. God help me.
He'd be tuning in?
No. Adam Kingsley and Andrew McQualter are our coaches on Monday. Let's go to Jay-Z and the boys for First Crack.